condoms for Hamas.
Hot dog is my favorite meat.
Well, hello.
Welcome to the Young Turks. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian. I've been away for a little bit. I've been traveling. I've been on CNN. Yesterday, I was on their streaming service coverage of the election with Charlemagne, with Ben Shapiro, with Harry Enton, who was like a total class act. Really liked the guy. So if you were able to catch that, I'm really happy you did. If not, I will be on Abby Phillips's show tonight, but I miss TYT like crazy. So I'm like really excited about the show today. And I'm so happy you're here with us because we're gonna have an awesome show. We're gonna have Scott Horton on to talk about his latest project. He is really doing a great job informing the public about foreign policy, the history of US foreign policy and the ramifications of it. And even though he's a libertarian, and even though we definitely have quite a few disagreements, I respect the information that he's trying to get out there to people so they understand why we are in the moment that we're in here in the US and the ramifications of our decision making or our government's decision making all across the globe. So that'll happen after our first segment today. We're also, of course, going to give you some news about the elections that took place last night, including the reactions to Zohran Mamdani's victory in the New York City mayoral race. Later in the show, we're going to also talk a little bit about this fury that's been directed at Brett Cooper, who has really been thought of as like this young conservative darling, but she defended Tucker Carlson's decision to have a conversation with Nick Fuentes. I can totally understand those who are maybe critical of the way Tucker Carlson handled it. Maybe they wanted him to go a lot harder, but let's just keep in mind that we have endless right-wing shows, online shows, that have been interviewing a literal war criminal who is wanted by the International Criminal Court, and that's Benjamin Netanyahu. And a lot of those interviews have been real friendly. I didn't see much backlash in that regard, but we'll get to all of that later. As always, just want to encourage you to like and share the stream if you are watching us live. It's a quick, easy, and free way to help support the work that we do here at TYT. And you can also become a member by going to tyt.com/join. All right, without further ado, let's talk a little bit about what happened yesterday.
Thank you to those so often forgotten by the politics of our city who made this movement their own. I speak of Yemeni bodega owners and Mexican abuelas, Senegalese taxi drivers and Uzbek nurses, Trinidadian line cooks and Ethiopian aunties. Yes, aunties. To every New Yorker in Kensington and Midwood and Hunts Point, know this city is your city and this democracy is yours too.
34-year-old Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani has decisively won the New York City mayoral race, effectively ending the Cuomo dynasty in New York City and proving that, or New York, I should say, since he was the governor of New York at one time, and proving that voters are ready for real change. This was, in my opinion, the result of Americans wanting pushback against the establishment, against the old way of doing things, against the status quo, and yes, against what we have been seeing both in the Trump administration, but more importantly, what we've been carrying out in both the Biden administration and the Trump administration in regard to US foreign policy. Now, despite all of the attacks that Zohran Mamdani basically had to deal with during the race, and very few of them actually had to do with his policy proposals and had more to do with his Muslim identity. He was able to just totally kick ass yesterday. So let's take a look at the polling results. So with over 90% reporting today, Mamdani led by 50.4% to Andrew Cuomo's 41.6%. Now, here's an important thing to keep in mind. Take a look at Curtis Sliwa, who received 7.1% of the vote, meaning Cuomo was going to lose even if Curtis Sliwa exited the race. So all the people who are directing all this abuse toward Curtis Sliwa today need to relax because they're wrong. Even if he had dropped out, Mamdani was going to win. He had a large enough lead to beat Andrew Cuomo in this race. Now, I just want to make a quick comment about the video that we started this segment with, because as I was watching his victory speech last night, that was the part that, for whatever reason, really made me emotional in a good way. And it's because of the fact that I'm currently in New York City right now to do CNN. And yesterday I went for a pretty lengthy walk to meet up with a friend for lunch. And I just couldn't help but really appreciate this city and the diversity here. I mean, it's what makes this city great, guys. And there are so many demographics in New York City and across this country that I think have been forgotten. They're the people who do a lot of hard work that help this country run. Your day-to-day lives are affected, impacted in a positive way by these individuals. They make the food we eat. They maintain and take care of the hotel rooms we stay in. And these are people who, again, have been neglected by our elected officials. And for whatever reason, like that part of the speech, like brought me to tears, because here you have someone who won his mayoral race in the largest city in this country, taking the time to recognize Americans of all different backgrounds. At the end of the day, we are Americans, right? Our backgrounds, our heritage, where our parents came from, where we came from, if we happen to immigrate here and are now American citizens, we are Americans. And it doesn't matter what your skin color is. I think America is really an idea. And like, as I've said before, people come here because they love the country. They come here because they want to help this country progress. They want to contribute to this country. And I think, with a lot of the rhetoric we've been hearing for years now, that message has been lost. So I loved what Zohran Mamdani had to say there. Now, Mamdani did win without really meaningful support from the Democratic establishment. And look, I'm gonna be really honest here. The Democratic establishment did Zohran Mamdani a huge favor. Do you really think that it would be one of Mamdani's assets to have Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer give him this big endorsement? I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. But right now, if you look at the Democratic electorate, I don't really think they're too pleased with the establishment. And I think the results of this election is further evidence of that. Now, Chuck Schumer never backed Zohran Mamdani. In fact, this is hilarious. Last night, Schumer wouldn't even say who he voted for, which is pretty hilarious. And I think we know. And Hakeem Jeffries tepidly endorsed him at the last minute, but in interviews made clear that he does not believe that Zohran Mamdani is the future of the Democratic Party. Now, he also won despite the fact that super PACs backed by billionaires and Donald Trump allies went all in on Cuomo, not because they like Cuomo, but because they see Mamdani as a threat. So they're like, oh, we might as well endorse, the monster we know, as opposed to support someone who is openly challenging crony capitalism, who is openly challenging a system that hasn't really worked out too well for a lot of New Yorkers. This city is expensive as hell. Okay, like I barely ate anything today because it's like every time I look at, the restaurant menu at this hotel, because I don't have time working. I don't have time to go out looking for food. And I know there's food everywhere, but I'd rather just stay here, get this show produced and ready to go. It is outrageously expensive just to have lunch here. I don't know how people afford housing here. And these are the issues that Mamdani spoke to that happened to appeal to the majority of New Yorkers. And despite all the attacks against him, it just didn't work. I mean, there was so much money against him. So let me give you some of those details. An analysis by Dropsite News showed that as of October 30th, independent expenses backing Cuomo were more than 7 times the amount of money put behind Mamdani. 7 times. That's insane. Cuomo has exceeded Mamdani by a staggering $36 million in outside support. Guys, this is what people power looks like. Okay, the people defeated the billionaires. And even in a system of legalized bribery and corruption, when people fight, when people get together and really do fight on behalf of the candidate they feel speaks to their values, that money's not gonna mean much. And by the way, let's be clear, that was also the case in the 2024 presidential election. As we all know, Kamala Harris raised far more money than the Trump campaign did. And she also raised a lot more dark money than now President Donald Trump did. So that's something to keep in mind as we sometimes find ourselves in despair because the system is unfair. And oftentimes, the money does have a massive impact on the outcome of these races. But in this case, it didn't work. And it just shows you what people power looks like. So the total amount backing Cuomo for targeting Mamdani totals $56 million. This is a mayoral race, $56 million, close to 2.5 times the amount backing Mamdani or attacking Cuomo. Okay, so billionaires Bill Ackman, who decided to put out a more conciliatory tweet after Mamdani's victory was announced. So Bill Ackman, Barry Diller, Dan Loeb, Steve Wynn, and Alice Walton are among the billionaires who poured money into the anti-Mamdani super PACs, and it still wasn't enough. Mamdani crushed. So in his victory speech, he took aim at both Democrats and Republicans for leaving average Americans behind, which, by the way, was the main point, was the focal point of his campaign, affordability. Take a look.
For as long as we can remember, the working people of New York have been told by the wealthy and the well-connected that power does not belong in their hands. Tonight, against all odds, we have grasped it. The future is in our hands. My friends, we have toppled a political dynasty. As we turn the page on a politics that abandons the many and answers only to the few, we will leave mediocrity in our past. No longer will we have to open a history book for proof that Democrats can dare to be great. This is not only how we stop Trump, it's how we stop the next one. So Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up.
Turn the volume up. And you know, when you hear from Democratic voters who say they want a fighter, this is what they're talking about. Someone who has and exudes confidence. And look, we'll see what his leadership actually looks like. You know, oftentimes there are big promises made, but we know how the system works. We know that he is not the almighty, all-powerful mayor who gets to unilaterally make decisions, and he's gonna run into plenty of obstacles, plenty of, local politicians who will try to stand in his way. I have no doubt about that. And also, we'll see if his policy proposals, if implemented, really do work out in terms of making housing affordable for New Yorkers, for making public transportation affordable, for making groceries affordable. The jury is out. But at the same time, you can't deny the fact that he had the exact message that New Yorkers and honestly Americans are so hungry for. Just genuinely speaking to the economic frustrations and the lack of affordability that Americans are faced with. really does help in these elections. Look, Abigail Spanberger, who is now the governor-elect for the state of Virginia, also ran on a not as enthusiastic, but similar message. She did focus on affordability far more than you would expect from a centrist Democrat, former CIA analyst, right? She won. But at the same time, there is a parallel there where she didn't neglect or forget that important messaging on economics and what Americans are facing in terms of affordability. And by the way, that's what Trump ran on. Now, obviously, we are far into his second term, and things are not affordable, that's for sure. And the latest reports indicate that our inflation is ticking up again, 3%. So that's not a good sign. So promises made, in some cases, promises not kept. And so I'm telling you that because if Zohran Mamdani fails to actually fulfill these promises on affordability, there will be a price to pay for that. And that's something to keep in mind. And I don't think he's lying when he says that this is something he cares about. I do think he's going to fight for New Yorkers. There's no question about that. But whether or not those promises are fulfilled is really going to determine what the future of the Democratic Party looks like, to be quite frank. And so I'm rooting for him. I really am. I'm really hoping that New Yorkers live in a city that isn't absolutely crushing them because of how unaffordable it is. So let's also break down a little bit of, well, who voted for Zohran Mamdani, because there's a lot of crap out there, a lot of lies about who ended up voting for him. And so I want to start off with Batiar Ungar Sargon, who, look, I actually really like her. I know that some in the audience might have issues with her. She says all sorts of things that I disagree with, especially as it pertains to Israel. That's fine. I actually really like her. She's a nice person. She's willing to engage in debate in a kind way, in a civil way. But what she says here is just untrue. And so let's take a look at that, and then I'll break it down for you.
So his constituencies were Muslims, South Asians, and then these 20 to 30 something overeducated, over-credentialed, downwardly mobile hipsters in Bushwick and Brooklyn who think they're the working class because they failed to get like amazing jobs and have student loan from getting, degree upon degree upon degree. They have enormous contempt for labor. And as a result, they want things from the government despite him being like the most privileged people on planet Earth. And Mamdani is their avatar. This is a guy who's like a total Nepo baby. They don't actually want him to do any of this stuff. They would never dream of shopping in an Aldi. Forget about a free supermarket. These are people who spend $12 on a cold brew, okay, Tim? It's all one big virtue signal.
So again, I'm not trying to trash Batiar Ungar Sargon. She's wrong here, though. And she's also wrong in regard to President Donald Trump really being a fighter for the working class, for the common man. She's totally wrong about that. And at this point, she should be honest about it. But nonetheless, first of all, Mamdani got more votes than anyone running for mayor of New York City in nearly 50 years. That was a fact that Harry Enton brought up on CNN yesterday while we were, discussing the race prior to him being announced as the winner of the mayoral race. And I was shocked by it, honestly. I mean, Mamdani, whether you like him or not, galvanized quite a bit of voters here in New York City. So by definition, his base has to be a bit bigger than what Batiar is describing here. So she's right that he has a lot of young supporters. That's definitely true. But they're not all 22-year-old hipsters in Bushwick. So let's get into the specific details. In fact, the percentage of people under 45 who voted for Mamdani over Cuomo is absolutely staggering. Take a look at this.
The dividing line I've been using is 45 years of age, and we have that in the exit poll here. Voters under 45 years old, Mamdani won them by 44 points, okay?
Wow.
Voters over 45, Cuomo's gonna win them by 12 points. Wow. So about a 56-point swing. Under 30 years old, Mamdani wins them by 61 points.
Wow. That's huge.
So age was a huge factor in this.
So age was a huge factor. So even men between the ages of 45 and 64 broke even, with 45% supporting Mamdani and 45% backing Cuomo. And guys, as we know, if you've been following Andrew Cuomo's political career, especially during COVID, it is mind-boggling that this man felt entitled to becoming the next mayor of New York City. He sent sick, elderly people who had COVID back to nursing homes, where they then spread COVID among other vulnerable elderly people. And those nursing homes had a high number of COVID-related deaths as a result. His leadership was absolute garbage. His campaign was absolute garbage. He took a vacation in the middle of his campaign. The guy wasn't serious. Now, Batia is also wrong that Mamdani's base is filled with only rich New Yorkers. So let's take a quick look at this. So the most affluent households, so those making more than $300,000, decisively broke in favor of Cuomo. There's no question. Okay, but there you have it. Over 50% of voters with a total family income between $30,000 and $200,000 in 2024 voted for Mamdani. Those in the $50,000 to $100,000 range favored him the most, while 62% of voters in the highest bracket, again, that's those making above $300,000 a year, did vote for Cuomo. Now, it sounds like the most privileged people on the planet actually desperately wanted Cuomo to win, not Mamdani. And in New York City, the cost of living obviously is a major concern, even for middle income earners. I don't know if you can really survive as a single person, even making six figures, $100,000. I don't think you're going to live a comfortable life in New York City, which is crazy, because $100,000 is a lot of money, especially if you're in certain parts of the country. That's a good income. But not in New York City. That's how outrageously expensive it is to live here. So, and in New York City, let's take a look at the cost of living. Let's actually take a look at his voters, especially South Asians. So he did do well among Asians, but he also got 57% support among Black voters and 53% among Latinos. The only race group he lost was with white people. And finally, regarding education, it is true that voters with no college degree voted for Cuomo more than they did for Mamdani by 5 points, by a 5-point margin. But having a bachelor's degree these days, as we all should know at this point, doesn't mean that you're part of the elite. In fact, a lot of young people who have college degrees today are drowning in debt, are not gainfully employed. I mean, just take a look at what's happening to coders in Silicon Valley as we speak. There are mass layoffs because their jobs are being replaced with AI. So college degree used to be a good indicator of someone who is more likely to be affluent, but that's not necessarily the case, especially these days. The final thing that I'll say is I've been noticing that some I don't even know if they're on the right, but a lot of them are on the right. A lot of them are basically smearing Mamdani as a jihadist, which I find utterly disgusting, but they're also attacking his wife. And I just want to show you this picture of her because, as one person on X wrote, she ate, and I agree. But more importantly, really, he's a jihadist? He's a jihadist. Okay. Where's the niqab? Get out of here with that. When you resort to those pathetic smears, and you don't have a real substantive counterpoint, a real substantive counter campaign to what Mamdani's message was really about, which again was about affordability, you're gonna lose. If you're gonna fearmonger about what Mamdani is gonna do to a foreign country, if you're going to whine about how Mamdani had declared that he would in fact arrest Benjamin Netanyahu, a war criminal, if he ever stepped foot in New York City, you're helping him with his campaign, because a war criminal absolutely should be arrested, especially when there's a warrant out for his arrest by the International Criminal Court because of the atrocities and the genocide he carried out in Gaza. So we'll see how Mamdani performs as the next New York City mayor. But this should be a lesson to anyone who actually cares about speaking to and winning over the American people. A lot of people are struggling today. And I didn't see anything from Cuomo's campaign acknowledging that struggle, wanting to alleviate that struggle, and providing actual solutions for that struggle. Cuomo ran a dog crap campaign. End of story. So with that in mind, we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, the wonderful Scott Horton will join us. I wanna kind of get his thoughts on the elections, but I also wanna talk to him about a new project he's launched that I think is gonna be really great if you want to be informed on international relations, foreign policy, and all of that. I think he's one of the leading voices on these issues. So let's take a break and he'll be with us when we come back.
What contributions to the progressive cause are you most proud of? I mean, I don't have super high aspirations for a singular role that I can play in the movement or anything. I try to present myself as what I think that I am, which is a progressive man who is driven by I think, well-interrogated and well-organized system of values that I try to stay consistent on, and I demonstrate that that's the sort of life that a person can lead and be successful and be happy and all of that. And that should not need to be done, but there are so many people on the right that are trying to push men in the opposite direction that I want to be able to do that. Along the way, if I can get people to care about some topics that they wouldn't necessarily care about, or that for some men they might think that's not a topic that they should be focused on, that's definitely something that I relish doing. And along the way, I mean, we've been able to introduce people to a lot of candidates. That's been a big part of what we've done. You know, not all of them necessarily got in office. Probably most of them did not. And a lot of them you might not even remember their names. But it was great to be able to provide people the platform where they had the chance of, you know, making a difference. Obviously AOC and all that, but there's been a lot of great people along the way.
In the bonus episode for the members, we do some inside baseball. We're gonna look at John's desk. Nice little spaceship here. Nerd. But it is kind of look cool. Who has Legos? Oh no. He's taken apart a keyboard. Who has a mouse pad that's this big? He's got a dog with a nose that you could hang something on. You know what this desk screams to me? Nerd. And that's how we like him. We love Johnny Pie. He's got his own personality like everybody does at TYT. Come meet us all in the bonus episodes. TYT.com/team. David Soror, Nina Turner.
Adam Green drop by.
Charlemagne.
Congressman, great to have you. It's great to be with you, Chang.
Your show is a great thing. You're informing people. A lot of the shows that I live on, you know, my CNN, my MSNBC, and even Fox, and any of the other shows, NPR, they are so quick to decide that they know what this building means today.
The one thing that I hate that politicians do, you know, they talk about the people they should be talking to.
Do they have any idea that they're the establishment and that they're hated? Or do they not realize that at all?
People are so deeply in their little universe. I think it's very easy to not really question what you're doing.
Voters have a right to ask questions of any nominee, whether they're independent, Republican, or Democrat.
The system is duopoly that suppresses competition.
How is it the year 2024 and we're still like, maybe they'll talk about paid medical? Like how is that like at one level it's like, look at what we're talking about now. You're like, it's 2024.
And that's always been the critique, that your critique of us is, well, you guys give good speeches, you put out good tweets, but you're not wielding actual power. Now we're starting to.
My favorite news platform by far. It's not even close.
It's about a country and a principle, and that's what you and I both work to achieve. And I'm so glad that at least half the battle has now been won.
If you want to go really hear what's going on, honestly, you should tune into the Young Turks.
Thanks for doing such a great job. Please keep it up. Hang tough.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy.
Oh, I like making that.
I didn't know about that.
This is a happy Anna Kasparian. You're welcome, YouTube.
Join the Dragon Squad by becoming a YouTube channel member. Click the join button below or sign up on tyt.com/join to get access to fun emojis, a member-only chat, exclusive shop TYT designs, ad-free watching, and so many other amazing perks. Plus, you get bragging rights for being part of the coolest community on the internet and help us drive real, positive change in the world. The Dragon Squad awaits, so join today.
TYT. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian. And there are so many foreign policy related stories on a daily basis that I want to talk about on the show. We never have enough time to talk about it on the show. But if you want a quick daily update on what's transpiring in the realm of foreign policy, you have to check out antiwar.com. Dave DeCamp does a daily video where he just kind of summarizes all the latest updates. And that's the first place I go to basically inform myself about what's going on. And one of the people who is a big part of antiwar.com is Scott Horton. He's the editorial director of the website. So I am very pleased to say that we're about to interview Scott Horton in just a minute. But before we do, take a look at this.
Mr. Horton may believe that the US is the source and cause of evil in the world. I disagree.
Okay.
Remember on September 12th, they held a 1 million-man candlelight vigil in downtown Tehran on behalf of the people of the United States. We had the entire world ready to listen to America, ready to join up in our cause, but it wasn't the right cause. It was, hey, you know what we could do? We could get a bonus war. People are so upset about the 3,000 dead New Yorkers, we could exploit that grief and fear. And we could overthrow whoever we want now.
I didn't realize Scott Horton was catching bodies for as long as he has been. Just absolutely embarrassing for Bill Kristol. One of these neocon freaks. Scott Horton is going to embarrass him over and over again. It's like a stern father giving a serious talking to a baby.
Well, today we have the honor of speaking to Scott Horton, the man who crushes war hawks and neocons like none other. Horton is the director of the Libertarian Institute, editorial director of antiwar.com, and host of the Scott Horton Show from scotthorton.org. He's also the author of several books, including Fool's Errand, Time to End the War in Afghanistan, Enough Already, Time to End the War on Terrorism, Provoked, How Washington Started the New Cold War with Russia and the catastrophe in Ukraine. Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be with you.
It's my pleasure. And by the way, as if you're not accomplished enough, you are launching a new project. It's called the Scott Horton Academy of Foreign Policy, which we will talk about in just a moment. But before we do, I figured it makes sense to kind of get your thoughts on two big things that have happened in the past week. First, I wanted to start off with your thoughts on the election results last night. And then I wanted to also get your thoughts on basically this insane effort, this very well-organized effort to destroy Tucker Carlson over the fact that he had a conversation with Nick Fuentes. Let's start off with the election though. Zohran Mamdani is getting a lot of attention. There was an organized effort to basically smear him as a jihadist. Why do you think those efforts didn't work?
Well, because they're just so blatantly false. It's like when Trump, when he ran against Biden in 2020, and he tried to frame Biden as a far leftist radical, which made him what? The steward of the status quo? When the whole thing was Biden is the center left liberal permanent Washington establishment guy, and that Trump was supposed to be the radical shaking things up, right? And so it got the narrative all wrong, and it didn't work because it was just so blatantly false. Joe Biden's a communist? Strom Thurmond's friend? No, he's got a lot of problems, but that's not what it's about. So it's that same kind of thing. In this case, this guy really is a communist, or at least a socialist, and not a jihadist. Or if I don't know, if how religious he is or not or whatever, but he's certainly not here to wage war for Bin Ladenite terrorism against American society. That's not what's dangerous about him. It's his economics, which I would disagree with. Perhaps you have more in common with his economic program than I would, but I would say that his victory is due to two obvious major things, and they're connected to our next subject with Tucker as well, which is one, the Israel lobby and the focus on Israel in the campaign. I read a little bit today about how Cuomo, who by the way is just an absolutely horrific and horrible candidate and should have never been in there in the first place, but how he really ran on this guy doesn't love Israel enough. Like that was really the basis of his campaign, even after the disastrous debate where they all said Israel, 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 Israel. And Mamdani said, well, I just care about New York City and I want to make New York City a better place. And that got such a huge reaction. And then what did Cuomo do? Israel, 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 Israel the whole time. And then I just watched a report about how 32%, so just shy of 1/3 of New York Jews that voted for Mamdani. So, and many of them, I don't know exactly how the Venn diagram of the proportions line up, but many of them said because of the Israel issue, meaning they are against Netanyahu and against what has been happening there and support him because he also is against that. And so it just goes to show how completely bankrupt and idiotic it was for Cuomo to run and make that the centerpiece of his thing. Where again, I disagree with Mamdani's prescriptions for what should be done. But what did he run on? The quality of life for the people of New York City and how he wants to make it better because at least he's considered the fact that they might need some improvement in their standard of living rather than just being thrown to some wolves. Where Cuomo apparently doesn't care about them anymore. He cares about the grandmas that he sent with COVID home to all the retirement homes with all the other grandmas that kill them too. And so it's just, and it's a huge part of what has discredited also the Republicans this whole time. Because Trump ran on America First. But MAGA, of course, is a coalition of America First and Israel Instead. And it's America First out here in the country, and it's Israel Instead. They're in Washington, D.C. and inside the White House. And so it gets to a point after he got his ceasefire and then let the Israelis restart the war and inflict the blockade and then let us get into what, thanks to the Ayatollah, in great part turned out to be a very short war because he decided to basically not fight back when America jumped in Israel's war against Iran. And you have all this time, still prices on the shelf for food to eat for your family keeps going up and up. And what does Donald Trump do? He wages war if he has to against the Federal Reserve to make them keep lowering interest rates, to, in other words, increase inflation because he's too afraid of the correction. He'd rather have high inflation than a recession. And since those are the breaks in a fractional reserve system like we have, our corrupt monetary system, he would rather just keep inflating until it's somebody else's problem. Like George Bush almost got away with in 2008, but not quite. And that's what he's going for. But that means the standard of living for the American people is getting further and further and further out of reach. Tucker Carlson, and this goes to your second question about Tucker Carlson. This is why people love him so much, because everybody knows he was born rich and is this kind of waspy guy and whatever. But he cares, obviously, about the people of this country. He talks about the standard of living. He talks about where did everybody's jobs go and how people are addicted to drugs and their friends and family are dying and how clearly the government in Washington doesn't care about us. And he was the one who pointed out the statistic that the average age now in America of first-time home ownership, first-time home buyers is 38 years old. 38.
It's crazy.
That's why, people were talking about on Halloween, how come there's no suburban streets full of kids trick-or-treating? Because all the young families with kids are living in apartments. They don't have a suburb to go out and to live in because Donald Trump won and Joe Biden increased the money supply by 1/3 in the name of making up for the COVID lockdowns. They then waged these massive bailouts and inflated the money supply and caused this massive inflation. So the American people just get screwed coming and going. And the party leadership, the liberals and the conservatives, the entire center have just refused to respond to the needs and the wishes, the outright, foot stomping demands of the American people. And so the American people, especially the younger, are moving further and further to the left and to the right. And then they want to point and scream, oh my God, communists and fascists everywhere. Well, how come people don't have faith in the center? Because the center is Bill Clinton. Rape you and bite you on the face. It's George W. Bush, send your son to war to die. Barack Obama, who will back Al-Qaeda and create a caliphate. Right? These people, John McCain and Joe Biden and Donald Trump won again, created so much money, is 1/3 of all the money that's ever been created of US dollars. This is the basis of the inflationary crisis. This is why people are living outside. People who are not bums, people with houses, people who used to have houses that they owned, people who they essentially they couldn't afford the adjustable rate mortgage type situation, or they couldn't afford their rent went up, and even they have jobs. When they talk about cutting SNAP, I don't know exactly what the proportion is, but it's a huge proportion of the people on food stamps have jobs.
That's
they
right.
still cannot make ends meet, and it's because of the inflationary money. I know that's not y'all's favorite topic, it's mine, but it's a huge part of what's wrong with this country.
It's actually one of my favorite topics, and we're headed for stagflation actually, because with the development of AI, unemployment is definitely shooting up right now, and you also have companies that are downsizing in response to Trump's weird, trade wars and tariff policy that I can't really understand. There's no real strategy there, right? And so there's already shortages of pharmaceutical drugs. We've been relying on foreign countries to manufacture our pharmaceutical drugs. And because of these trade wars, we're starting to see shortages. I mean, it is a complete and utter disaster. And I agree with you when it comes to the central banks. I mean, when you look at the stock market, for instance, it's just a massive bubble. It's an asset bubble. And you're right, everyone's afraid of the correction. Yep. But you need the correction. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I just say right here that this is so fantastic. This part of this conversation is so important to me because, other than foreign policy, what I want everyone to agree with libertarians about is just this one thing. You don't have to agree with us about the welfare state. Hell, you don't have to agree with us about the warfare state. Just people need to understand. It was Ludwig von Mises who figured out this is what causes the boom and the bust cycle. They call it the business cycle, but it's the government's inflationary counterfeit money cycle is what it is. And that's what causes the giant booms and then the very real busts. So even if you think libertarians are all wet about everything, well, whatever, they're right about gold money. We have to have hard money because as long as the government can print money, first of all, they'll create a massive world empire with an unlimited budget, a $7 trillion budget every year, because they think that they can just print money forever to get away with it. And they'll get, way out of our control in the first place. But then even when we think it's good times, that's just when they're setting us up to pull the rug out from under us. And everybody has to do a giant reset like we did in 99 and 2008. And we were due for one when they did the COVID lockdowns. So that sort of substituted for the recession of 20, the same time they again did the giant bailouts to make up for it again.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that, actually. But the other thing I'll say is, even though you and I'm sure, have disagreements when it comes to the welfare state, whether you're talking about Democrats, Republicans, left-wing media, right-wing media, I'm sorry, but no one is doing better coverage of foreign policy than the libertarians. Antiwar.com is fantastic. Okay, absolutely fantastic. And I just find myself gravitating toward your content when it comes to these issues because you're well read, you know what you're talking about, and you don't lean into ridiculous fear mongering to scare Americans into essentially consenting to these endless wars that do nothing to benefit the American people. And so to that point, I do want to talk a little bit about the Tucker thing because, I watched a lot of Tucker's content prior to agreeing to go on his podcast, because prior to that, I had all these ideas in my head about who Tucker is because I remember him from his neocon days. I remember him from, his Fox News days where he said all sorts of things that I vehemently disagreed with. And I didn't know if it made sense for me to have a conversation with him. So I started listening to his podcast daily and realized he's super remorseful about his neocon days. He apologizes for it on a regular basis. And he speaks to, and I think it's sincere, he speaks to the real struggles of Americans, particularly young Americans who can't afford houses, don't think they can afford to get married and have kids. It is leading to a level of despair in this country that has been completely neglected by our political elite. And let's also keep it real, by our corporate media and mainstream legacy media. So when he decided to have Nick Fuentes on, I kept an open mind, even though I know about all the things that Nick Fuentes has said. I know that he has, celebrated Hitler. I know all that stuff. But I wanted to see, okay, what's going to come out of this conversation? And I feel that there has been this misconception about how Tucker didn't push back against Nick Fuentes at all, when he very clearly did, and drew a distinction between what Tucker Carlson believes and what Nick Fuentes believes. Nick Fuentes still believes, and he said it during this podcast interview, that the problem is this global, organized Jewry. Tucker Carlson pushed back on that and said, no, I totally disagree. And in fact, when you pin this on the Jews, all you do is discredit everyone who is specifically critical of Israel. And so this effort to cancel him, I don't think is really just about Nick Fuentes. I think it's about everything that Tucker has been saying in pushing back against the foreign policy that now several administrations in this country have engaged in, including the fact that we've supported Israel, regardless of who's in power there, regardless of what they have done in that region of the world. That's my take. It doesn't mean that you have to defend Nick Fuentes, but I am defending the idea that two consenting adults sit down and have a conversation without having this organized campaign meant to destroy the interviewer, in this case, Tucker Carlson. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I totally agree with you. And you're especially on the point about, well, on all of it, but especially the thing to focus on here is the thing about how they don't mean it. This isn't about Nick Fuentes at all. This is about Tucker Carlson's turn against Israel and against the war party overall. And they've decided they have something that they think that they can use against him, which parentheses ain't gonna work anyway, Jack. Tough luck. But that's what they're trying to do. And of course, anyone who watched the interview saw the same interview you did, where all this talk about platforming is so ridiculous. The guy's a journalist. The guy's interviewed Ayatollahs and God knows who, right? That's his job, is to interview people who are important in the news. And this guy, this young guy Fuentes, is now, it's undeniable. If you look at his audience size, he is a force to be reckoned with one way or another on the right. And Tucker clearly has been struggling to figure out how to deal with him. And I saw a clip where Fuentes said, sounds believable, I didn't ask Tucker, but seemed like maybe Tucker had asked Max Blumenthal and his wife to write this thing against him back years ago, kind of thing. Tucker's really trying to figure out a way to, do like a Mark Levin and cancel him. And he said in his interview with Candace Owens, I think this guy's a plant. Like he's COINTELPRO. He's sent to make all of us look bad like him for sidling up and agreeing with most of what we say, and then also saying a bunch of crazy stuff, And so, but the problem with that was he had no real evidence for that. And so Tucker, from on high now, Mr. Fox News big shot guy, even said in his criticism, he lives in his mom's basement. So it was a big guy swinging at a little guy, and then he missed. And he actually made a baseless accusation. So then he was in the position where he kind of had to eat a little crow. I think, he didn't tell me this or anything, but I think this is sort of the way I read the situation. After swinging and missing, he kind of had to go ahead and have him on and let the kid, define himself as he would. And then, of course, as you say, Tucker, and all anyone has to do is just watch this. People are like, they get a screenshot in their head of, oh no, a platforming happened or something. Watch what happened in the conversation. And as you say, it's Tucker explaining over and over and over again. Well, you say you have the same religion as me, but our religion teaches opposite of what you're saying your conclusions are here. And then it is true that Tucker didn't say I don't know how this is supposed to work. He brings the guy out to the middle of Maine. You know what I mean? He's not just gonna sit there and beat him over the head. But perhaps he could have said, hey man, you really have crossed the line in some of this stuff you've said about blacks and Jews and Hitler and this and that. Like this is some pretty, and he didn't hit him that hard on that. But the way I read that was that he was leaving Fuentes space to back down a little bit in a way and say, because in fact, like check out the difference between the Jews are all a bunch of traitors serving Israel and, well, Sheldon Adelson wasn't a neoconservative, just a Jewish Zionist. And so his Jewishness obviously informs his Zionism somehow. Okay, well that's true for a lot of Jewish Zionists, that Jewishness and Zionism seem to go together to them. Okay, but what does that say about the millions and millions and millions of American Jews? Doesn't say anything about them at all, does it? It's a completely different way of framing it. And so when Tucker said, okay, well, let's just draw our lines here and see, Fuentes seemed to back down from his own position quite a way. Now
you're right. Yeah, you're right about that. And
in a way, one more thing there is, I've actually kind of been mulling this over because I think it represents a real crisis for the right and especially the anti-war and anti-Zionist right. That what are we going to do with this guy? Before he made sure that he was so beyond the pale that like, fine, he has his corner over there. But now he's going, yeah, it's me and Tucker and Candace against the war party. And it's like, now listen, man, you're still an avowed Hitlerian and whatever, to whatever degree. And look, I'm not the greatest connoisseur of the guy, but I've seen some pretty astounding clips before, okay? I've not watched hours and hours, but I know about him that, and I know the origin story that Ben Shapiro's what did this to him when he was just a kid. So it's almost a comic book movie. Like, this is where your villain came from, was he was so mistreated unfairly when he was too young, whatever. But now what does the entire anti-war right? And you see there's a giant faction fight on the right where the war party is going after, and not just the war party, but like, more mainstream Republican types are really going after Tucker and everyone anti-Zionist and hanging Fuentes around all of our necks. And it represents a real conundrum of what we're gonna do. Here he's trying to soften and sort of join up with a larger movement, but in a way that can really only cause them nothing but grief, right? To me, It seems like what he should do is he should just go full COINTELPRO against Israel and say, yes, he's a National Socialist. He shares the exact ideology of the Likud party, which is ethno-religious nationalism and exclusivism and collectivism at the expense of the other, which is what he believes in and which is what Benjamin Netanyahu believes in. Richard Spencer, who they previously made poster boy for the so-called alt-right back 10 years ago, he said, well, I don't see a problem with Zionism. I just want Zionism for white people here. That's all. And at one time, he challenged a rabbi at Texas A&M. I think it was a rabbi. It might have been a professor. I forget. But he challenged, I think it was a rabbi at Texas A&M and said, well, do you support open immigration to Israel? And he goes, well, of course. Oh, in fact, what he did was he sat there silent and he couldn't think of a thing to say. And then he just turned around and walked away, handing the point to the Nazi, to an avowed National Socialist. And so if Nick Fuentes really resents Israel, he ought to sidle up to them instead up to Tucker Carlson and friends.
I just think, especially as someone who was very much part of the cancel culture left at one point, especially after the 2016 election, attempting to silence people or censor people or punish people for having conversations, it doesn't work. In fact, all it does is help the very individual you are trying to crush become more and more popular. The only thing that works is engaging in debate, engaging in discussion. And, sunlight really is the best disinfectant. And I'm sorry, how many shows agreed to do sit-down interviews with a literal war criminal, Benjamin Netanyahu, who was wanted by the International Criminal Court, gave softball interviews. And this is a guy who has literally engaged in mass slaughter, including of children. There's no campaign to cancel those shows. And I wouldn't want a campaign to cancel those shows. I covered some of those interviews. I critiqued those interviews, substantively. And then you just get to pushing, you move on, right? But this idea that it is beyond the pale for Tucker Carlson to sit down with, Nick Fuentes. And again, I have huge issues with things that Nick Fuentes has said. But compare him to, again, Netanyahu, who's actually killed people, wiped out entire bloodlines. No pushback on that. It's kind of amazing. Okay, so before we go, I did want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about your latest project. So this is the Scott Horton Academy of Foreign Policy, which I'm super excited about. So tell me what this project is and what motivated you to launch it.
Well, thank you very much. It's the Scott Horton Academy of Foreign Policy and Freedom. It's at scotthortonacademy.com. And it's long form courses by myself and other experts on crucial matters of foreign policy and freedom, like in the title there, the title is also a homage to Ron Paul's book. That's a collection of great speeches he gave, Foreign Policy and Freedom there, Foreign Policy of Freedom. Anyway, it's me giving about a 30-hour course on everything I know about America's Middle East wars for the last 45 years, essentially in my lifetime since the Jimmy Carter years. And walking you through all of that step by step and showing how it really is one long story all the way through. And I covered this stuff for a very long time. I've done more than 6,000 interviews on my show. It took me a while before I could really see the whole thing as one good timeline where I think I got all my puzzle pieces filled in and I'm ready to help you guys catch up. So the purpose of the thing is essentially for everybody to be as well informed on foreign policy as I am, to get everybody caught up to where I've been. I've been doing this antiwar.com thing since, more than 20 years now. Since 2004 is when I first started writing and working for them. And so I've been completely immersed in all of this, and I just want everybody to be as effective as possible. As you showed in your clip there, the war hawks, like Bill Kristol, and he's the king of the hawks. Is the axis of crystal. The neoconservatives that lied us into war is what Justin Raimondo called them back then. There's a king of them, and he's worthless. He's got nothing. And it wasn't just that I'm so great. It was that he absolutely has nothing, and it's the same with all these war hawks. I know it happens every time you go on Piers Morgan and go up against these hawks. Every time Dave Smith or anybody informed goes up against the hawks, they get completely destroyed. And so my thing is, well, what if there were just thousands and thousands and thousands more people who are really capable of taking this stuff on? And so not everybody can sit and read, 15 Chomsky books or whatever. So this is going to be me taking you through it. And then I have a bunch of great experts and a bunch of other great courses and more coming soon, including I have a Lutheran scholar who is debunking Christian Zionism and is doing a great course on that. And that'll be, up there within a few weeks from now. So we're going to be adding more and more courses all the time. And I'm really proud of it. We've got a really great reaction so far, tons of subscribers and a lot of great emails of positive response. So I'm feeling really good about it. And by the way, I asked my guy and he set it up. So we got a promo code Anna for the rest of the week until midnight Friday night. You'll get 10% off.
I love it. Thank you so much for that. And everyone, please check it out because you've just been an amazing resource for people who actually want to learn the truth about US foreign policy and its ramifications and who we're actually allied with and whether or not it makes sense for these individuals or these countries to be considered our allies. Scott, you're wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time and being so generous with us. And I hope you'll come back soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everyone, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the panic that's ensued among the Zohran Mamdani detractors here in New York City. So that and more when we come back. Stick around. What's up, everyone? Welcome to our new member, CEO A Jesus One, and welcome to everyone who's been watching. I hope you guys have been enjoying the show so far. Let's go to our members section. We have Art Guy who says, "Hi, everyone. With all due respect to Operation Hope, the Mamdani win was an industrial grade shot of hopium straight to the vein." I think a lot of people are feeling that way, especially here in New York City. Dragon Knees Nuts says, "Anyone else just feels super hopeful after last night?" That seems to be the theme of a lot of these comments. Michael Prestano says, "Imagine how embarrassing this must be for Cuomo right now. He was the governor and couldn't win in a mayoral race." Delicious. Couldn't agree more. Scoopster says, "Hail our salt queen. We miss you." Thank you. I miss you guys as well. I was like ridiculously excited to be back on the show today. Gary Donahoe says, "It's so great to have our conquering hero Anna back. I'm so proud of New York City. Immigrants will save our democracy." I think Americans who love this country, including immigrants, will save our democracy and save our country. And by the way, guys, this conversation with Scott Horton, I hope you all enjoyed it. Scott Horton and I don't agree on everything, but how great was that conversation? And so I think what has helped me see the light on a lot of things in this country and kind of move toward a path that I think is better for myself and for everyone is seeing the humanity in everyone, number one, understanding that there is a difference between people who love this country or hate this country. And when we have our differences, that is okay. That doesn't make the person you're disagreeing with on policy a bad person. But I think that most Americans, regardless of where they fall on the ideological spectrum or how they label themselves, have a lot more agreement than disagreement, right? And so he was surprised that I had the feelings I have about the Federal Reserve, which surprises me that he was surprised. But the conversation is important because you get to learn about people who might have some differences, but actually share some serious agreement as well. Anyway, let's go to our super chats. We've got Raj Nayak who says, good job. Like to listen to you and Cenk. Thank you. I'm happy that you're here with us. Chrome Chinchilla says, Anna, how are you traveling during these crisis times with air traffic? By the way, Kate, I plan on doing the show tomorrow. I'm flying back to New York City and then going straight to the studio to host the show. I think we should have backups. I'm getting like a lot of notifications from the airport about how the shutdown is impacting air traffic controllers. TSA agents are calling in sick. So there's going to be massive delays. Hopefully it doesn't affect me, but I think we should have a backup in case it does affect me. But anyway, let me read the rest of the comment. Share some tips with us. And also let's regain America for what it stands for. America first, not apartheid. Totally agree with you on that. And I've just been lucky so far, to be honest with you. Hopefully I stay lucky. Hey everyone, that interview ran a little long, which I'm not mad at. I love that conversation, but I'm just going to give you a quick message and then take another break and bring Waz in for the second hour. I need to let you know about something super important here. Noble Mobile, because how many companies have a rhyming brand name? Not many. Noble Mobile. So TYT and Noble Mobile are teaming up. The partnership succeeds because we're both committed to fighting against the corrupt greed of industry giants, corporate media, and big wireless. Noble Mobile is the only wireless plan that pays you to use your phone less. Switch to Noble's No Bull plan and get unlimited data for only $50 a month. For any data you don't use, you get cash back that you can spend however you want. Stop letting your unused data go into the pockets of billionaires and shareholders. Switch to Noble and take control of your data and save money at the same time. People who switch to Noble save, and they save an average of over $500 a year on their phone bill. So switch to Noble today by visiting go.tyt.com/switch. That's go.tyt.com/switch. It supports TYT in our mission of delivering true independent media. Again, that's go.tyt.com/switch. All right, everyone, we're going to take another quick break. We'll be right back. I don't care if you're Christian. In fact, I will fight for you to have your religious liberty and practice your Christianity. I believe in that. I don't believe in Christianity, which means that you do not get to dictate the way I live my life based on your religion. I don't care what the Bible says. You have every right in the world. All those women who identify with your religion have every right in the world to not get an abortion, to not take birth control, but they do not have the right to dictate my life and what I decide to do with my body. I don't care about your goddamn religion. I'm so tired of having nonstop conversations about what the Bible says. You live your life in the way that you interpret the Bible. Again, I don't care, but you don't get to take the Bible and tell me, well, the Bible says this in this chapter, in this verse. I don't care. I don't care. I don't believe in it. And I have the right, based on our Constitution, to not believe in it.
Here I am, Nancy Pelosi, saying this country needs a strong Republican Party, and we do.
No one is representing what I call the silent majority, which is about 2/3 of this country, indisputably progressive.
But now we say the time has come for regime change in American television.
The Young Turks Network.
You know, you have the Young Turks saying this is the time to fight for our values.
Young Turks is the oldest left media institution I believe that there is. Real front runner in the online media space.
You guys might know us.
biggest online left-of-center outlet that exists.
All of you know the Young Turks?
People from this district heard about Justice Democrats by watching your show.
Thanks to the Young Turks for covering Trayvon Martin's case early on when few people were covered.
They don't stop, I won't stop. Racism won't stop, so I won't stop.
Species are at risk of going extinct. Major media outlets did not dedicate much time at all to that.
We reached a whole heap of people with our progressive message. We're not the Young Turks, you're the Young Turks. 300 million is a pretty good number, Well, that's the size of the US population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world. We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day. We looked at you like, are you nuts?
Young Turks has just passed another milestone. 25 billion lifetime views. Damn. Too strong, way too strong. That's 25 billion times someone watched the progressive message delivered to people all over the world. You know who helped to do that? You guys did. Our members and our audience are amazing, and they helped us to reach 2 generations, both millennials and Gen Z. They're both super progressive. And I gotta tell you, we're just getting started. Thank you.
Corruption, injustice, the system is rigged against you. Every day we're blasted by a flurry of terrible news from every angle, which can make it challenging to stay positive and know how to fight back. The Damage Report is your solution. I'm Johnny DeRola, and my daily morning show cuts through the noise and exposes the real damage being done to our country, the world, and how we can fight back against it. Corporate greed crushing workers? We'll name names. Politicians selling you out for their corporate overlords? We've got the receipts. Climate disaster, economic collapse, the rise of fascism. No spin, no establishment talking points, just the truth that you need to survive and resist. But it's not all doom and gloom. We'd love to have you join the Dragon Squad, our community of positive-minded activists who turn the day's news into positive action. With new episodes every weekday, listen to The Damage Report to get honest news, unflinching commentary, and daring coverage you won't find anywhere else. Listen to The Damage Report on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, because understanding the damage is the first step to fixing it.
I can't stand these young people. Get them out of here.
Show today. Come on. How good is the show today? We've got Waz. I'm so excited, Waz. How you doing? Wozni Lambre, of course.
I'm doing amazing. Just incredible. I think I might have been on here the day after the primary victory, which was actually more exciting than this in the sense that I just had no expectation that he would actually win the freaking primary. And then he does pretty overwhelmingly. And like last night was just kind of like, it was a build up to like, oh, he's going to win. But it's still pretty exciting. And talking to all of our friends on the left, who is just, it's always just like the darkest, bleakest news imaginable, where it's like when we're not aiding and abetting an insane genocide, it's like, oh, now we're just killing people off the coast of South America. I know. And then last night you get a jolt of good news and it's like, the fight continues. It's fun, it's nice.
Yeah, with Zohran Mamdani, the thing that I find electrifying is that all the people I hate who hate him are just seething endlessly. And so there's something for everyone, okay? Yes, when it comes to this mayoral race. Anyway, so why don't we actually get into that? Because there was a lot of seething online, both last night and today. And I want to talk about what these people are getting wrong. So let's get into it.
I have friends of mine in New York. My phone is blowing up. They are officially depressed and scared. And as Martha pointed out earlier, a full 9% of people say that they will leave if he in fact got elected. I'm literally in tears. I'm having a hard time keeping a straight face. One is a meme of the Statue of Liberty, sitting down, smoking a cigarette. F it. I'm going to move to Florida. The other one has a picture of Mamdani, and it says, Realtor of the Year in the state of Florida.
I now get it. I now understand the sheer joy MAGA was experiencing as they would own the libs, okay? Because that video compilation of Sean Hannity alone made Zohran Mamdani's mayoral victory in New York City worth it, okay? That was amazing. But there has been a lot of anger, a lot of seething, a lot of fear mongering on social media since Mamdani won the race. And I want to get into it. Before the race was even called, though, you have the president of the United States, Donald Trump, absolutely freaking out on social media and also saying this about Jewish people, which I find particularly gross. Any Jewish person that votes for Zohran Mamdani, a proven and self-professed Jew hater, that is not true. I mean, I don't think I need to tell you guys that, but just to be clear, that's not true, is a stupid person. So here's Trump calling Jewish Americans who voted for Mamdani stupid, which is insane. And then just before the poll results were announced, Shabbos Kestenbaum, who I've had a few interactions with on Piers Morgan's show, took shots at the Gaza Ministry of Health, which is believed to essentially undercount how many Palestinians the IDF has killed because they don't count the people trapped under the rubble. And he tied it to Mamdani's election results or expected election results. According to the Gaza Ministry of Health, Zohran Mamdani just won a whopping 312% of the vote. Like, I don't even know what that was meant to communicate. Like, are you trying to say that the race was rigged or something? I don't know. But the real freak out took place after Zohran Mamdani won. So let's go to another one of my favorites, Elon Levy, who shouldn't really care much about what's transpiring in New York City since he lives in Israel. But nonetheless, he says, if you're a Jewish New Yorker who doesn't understand why Mamdani will be a disaster for you, ask your grandparents. And that was in response to a post by Peter Beinart, where he says, if you're a Jewish New Yorker who can't understand why people in your city voted for Zohran Mamdani, ask your children. They probably did too. Then you have some of the more panicky posts, Lizzie Savetsky, who says, this will get ugly. We will feel the hits and we will answer boldly and unapologetically. Prepare, protect, and pray. Mark my words. This is only the beginning of the vicious storm that will rage through our great nation. Buckle up. So that was in reference to all of the smears about Zohran Mamdani allegedly being a Jew-hating jihadist. None of that is true, of course. But that fear-mongering campaign was the only thing his detractors deployed in order to crush him, and it didn't work. There is no indication that Zohran Mamdani is going to persecute Jewish people at all. The only reason why this smear campaign even exists is because he's not on his knees filleting Benjamin Netanyahu like all the other politicians in this country do. He said that he has no interest in visiting any foreign country as mayor of New York City because he wants to stay here in New York City as the mayor to take care of the people here. And he also said that he would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he stepped foot in New York City because, well, after all, the International Criminal Court has a warrant out for his arrest because he's a war criminal. There's more though. Zionists in particular are threatening to leave the United States, which don't threaten me with a good time. Here's one guy who says, dear New York City Jews, by the way, over 30% of New York City Jews voted for Mamdani, but nonetheless, not even Mamdani can destroy a great city like New York in one night, but the process has begun. Indeed, it was a great run and you were a blessing to New York City, but Jews will feel less and less comfortable in the Big Apple. So do yourself a favor, buy real estate in the land of Israel. It's good for your kids, it's good for your money, and it's simply the next chapter in our people's story. Let Mamdani be a messenger of a good but hard decision. Goodbye, New York. Shalom, Jerusalem. And then others are looking to segregate themselves from the rest of New Yorkers. Here is Rabbi Mark Schneier, who says, with the news of Zohran Mamdani's mayoral victory, I am announcing plans for the building of the first Jewish day school in the Hamptons. This is in anticipation of the thousands of Jewish families that will flock to the Hamptons and greater Suffolk County. Suffolk County, to escape the anti-Semitic climate of Mamdani's New York City. Okay, that was.
You know, all I'm reading in those tweets is a bunch of people who are mad that Zohran's campaign wasn't explicitly about them. That's it. Some guy who can go to the Hamptons to sequester himself. Yeah, sorry, this wasn't the campaign for you. This campaign isn't about you. New York is already working perfectly fine for you. You're not dependent on most of the public goods and services. You know, I'm pretty sure you're fine paying your mortgage, because I'd be shocked if any of these people paid rents in New York, because they speak from their little perch. Like if you don't rely on the goods and services in New York City, meaning the buses, the trains, the school system, et cetera, yeah, the campaign wasn't about you. And so you feel left out. And that's all this is to me. And it's just like, yo, get over yourself. Sorry, we're not gonna have a city hall that is literally just dedicated to Wall Street and the freaking real estate lobby, who is as powerful as any interest anywhere in our country. We're gonna try to have a program for normal, everyday people. And that's what they're pissed off about.
Yeah, and also, look, there is a sense of entitlement that I think is really hurting pro-Israel people in this country, right? A mentality that they have that they really need to reconsider. When you attack politicians because they don't support a foreign country and they want to take care of the people in this country, you turn people against you. Okay, that is a losing strategy. You are not entitled to that. No foreign country is entitled to that. And so the attacks against Mamdani, like there was very little in terms of like criticism over his policy proposals. There was some, but the bulk of the attacks against Mamdani centered on the fact that he didn't want to fillet, Netanyahu, that he wasn't supportive of what Israel had been doing in Gaza. He didn't mince his words about it. And I really respect that. That doesn't make him anti-Semitic. It doesn't make him a Jew hater. There's no indication that he hates Jewish people or is going to do anything to harm Jewish New Yorkers. And luckily, over 30% of Jewish New Yorkers didn't buy the BS smears against Mamdani. I did love this. Michael Rappaport, unironically use the meme that MAGA likes to poke fun at. So this is a woman who started screaming as soon as Trump was announced as the winner of the 2016 presidential election. She was screaming no. And Michael Rappaport literally used that same meme because he agrees with the sentiment, only in regard to Mamdani, of course. Katie Halper says, love that this is a real tweet. Now, I want to just quickly go over why it is that Americans have been souring on the US alliance with Israel. Because there is a massive misconception and weird paranoia that it's all about hatred toward Jewish people. And it's not. It has nothing to do with Jewish identity. It has everything to do with just a small list of facts that I've gathered for you. So you can understand what's really going on here. So of course, Zohran Mamdani has never attacked Jewish people, literally ever. But he has been a critic of Israel. During the debate, again, he refused to say that he would visit Israel as his first international trip after winning as mayor. And he said that he'd arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. That's it. Now, typically these bold views would hurt candidates, but that isn't the case with Mamdani. We are in a new era, and I'm happy to see it. And it's because New Yorkers are probably feeling what we here at TYT have been feeling. So maybe Israel defenders should maybe consider the actions of Israel and how that is essentially leading to Americans not really wanting to have this close relationship, especially with the kind of government that Israel has at the moment. So on June 15th, 2024, here are some examples of what makes people sour on Israel. I'm just trying to help them out so they understand. June 15th, 2024, on the episode of the Israeli-based show Half Cross with Aubrey Gilad and Yair Shekri, former Israeli MP Moshe Feiglin essentially evoked Hitler to describe Israel's plans for Gaza. So here is a post by someone who's clearly Jewish saying that this MP quotes Hitler to explain the agenda of settling Gaza and turning it into Hebrew. So let me read you his actual quote. He said, as Hitler said, like this is a Jewish individual in Israel using Hitler as like what, a leader? As inspiration? What are you doing? But I'll read it to you. As Hitler said, I cannot live if one Jew is left. We can't live here if one Islamo-Nazi remains in Gaza. And of course, he thinks all of the Palestinians are Islamo-Nazis. So that kind of stuff, believe it or not, most Americans not in favor of mass slaughter. Not in favor of the mass slaughter they've been seeing live streamed over the last 2 years. Here's another example. An Israeli, well, self-identified Israeli sniper named Aaron Levitsky sent a conservative American critic of Israel, her name is Morgan Ariel, some pretty insane death threats. I'm gonna read them to you. So here's the first round. Where you live in America, why are you demonizing Jews? There'll be deadly consequences. Stop this dangerous anti-Semitic propaganda. I'm seriously warning you. There will be deadly punishment. I promise to God. You boils my blood. You boiling my blood. Let's read more. There's more. Morgan, you boiling my blood right now. Stop Nazi propaganda, bitch. I will dedicate my life to F all of you piece of crap anti-Semites. He used a different word, but you get the point. You must pay a heavy price for hate against Jews. I will piss on your grave, anti-Semite. So she reported that as she should. By the way, I've gotten similar threats. I don't trust our FBI, so I didn't report it to the FBI. I have started reporting things to local police just to have a paper trail. But nonetheless, she reported this to the FBI. And they basically told her, yeah, there's really not much we can do. Take a look.
He said he was going to hunt me down like a dog and on my grave. So last week, probably thanks to you guys as well for everybody making noise about it, the FBI did contact me and they did reach out to me. They opened up an investigation into the account Aaron Levitsky, and I was waiting for the investigation to come back last Thursday. I followed up with them and they told me that they thought that they had located the account, but they didn't have any more information for me at that time. I followed up with them yesterday, at which point he said that he did locate the country that the account was from, but that they could not verify who the individual was, and that the best thing for me to do is to block the account and to let them know if I hear anything else from this individual, but that this individual is not in the United States per them. I asked them, of course, in follow-up, okay, well, can you please tell me what country this individual is allegedly in? And they told me, no, they can't do that.
When you have now several American citizens killed in the West Bank, when you have an American citizen who's a teenager still detained by the Israelis, they won't release him. They claim that they're detaining him because he allegedly threw a rock. When these types of stories start percolating in the media, especially independent media that actually cares and reports on these stories, yeah, Americans start to sour on the foreign government that we are all led to believe is our greatest ally. Here's another example. When you have Zionist organizations and groups targeting critics of Israel to destroy their lives, people start souring on Israel. Here is one of our viewers, Danny K. Politics. He wrote, hey, Jank, Danny Krikorian here, follower of you and Anna. Randy Fine got me fired from Valencia College in Florida, where I taught US government for defending Palestine. Ruined my life. So tell me something, are Americans supposed to be happy about these types of situations, these types of incidents? Larry Ellison bought TikTok to censor critics of Israel. Americans don't like censorship, including the right, by the way. His son bought CBS and is on a mission to also purchase the parent company of CNN to further silence Israel critics. So Warner Discovery is the parent company of CNN. And they already have these mass firings taking place over at CBS under Barry Weiss's leadership. And then finally, there are endless videos endless videos of IDF soldiers, some of which are posted by the IDF soldiers themselves, acting like rabid monsters. So there's one that went viral recently. This video dates back to 2016. I want to be clear about that, but it's recently gone viral, and it features a little Palestinian girl essentially getting her bike taken away from her by an IDF soldier. Take a look. And I'm pretty sure defending the Israeli prison guards who gang raped Palestinian prisoners on camera didn't help their cause either. So this has nothing to do with hating Jews. This has nothing to do with hating people because of their identity or their religion. It has everything to do with a country that has a government and a military that behaves like monsters. People need to understand that. And efforts to smear people who have enough moral conviction to speak out against it isn't going to help your cause. I just really wanted to make that clear, Waz. And, I don't know, maybe I'm being unfair, but I doubt it.
Think so. I think my problem with a lot of the support for Israel, especially here, is I think they just want people to see it as just. They want people to see it as righteous. And I think most of the people who support it here, they know that it's none of those things, but they feel like it's necessary. They've really got it in their mind that the Jewish people of the world could never be safe if there isn't an ethno state for Jewish people, which, again, I just find that crazy to say from your crib in the Upper West Side or Beverly Hills or, San Francisco, California. Like, that just sounds absurd to me to say that, like, no Jewish person is safe, if a state in Israel where it's just literally 80% Jewish people doesn't exist in that manner. I don't know. I just don't understand the need to see it as just. That just strikes me as strange. And what I would say too, and we literally just saw this with the Saudi Arabian Comedy Festival. People killed those comedians. They killed them for going to Saudi Arabia because it's like, bro, like, this is gross. We don't like what the Saudis stand for. They did 9/11. They're chopping up journalists in a hotel room and putting his body in a freaking cooler. Like, people killed those folks and nobody was like, oh, that's Islamophobic. Oh, why are you so obsessed with that? I remember when they were doing their indiscriminate bombing campaign in Yemen. People protested that. I remember Bernie was the only one that put it to a vote, was like, yo, we shouldn't be sending weapons to these folks to carry out these mass killings, indiscriminate killings. Like, it was literally the same thing, to be honest. It's just that there was nobody on TV. There were no Saudis going on TV to be like, no, actually, those children and kids and innocent civilians in Yemen, no, they actually deserve it. Or we were actually getting a couple of Houthis, whatever. We killed 100 people, but there were 2 Houthis in that rubble. Like it just didn't exist that way. I'm just kind of baffled by the pushback, but I do think it does stem from an almost universal support across the board, bipartisan, damn near 80% support for Israel and their project and everything they've ever done for years, decades, up until October 7th. And I think people just almost can't believe what's happening.
Yeah, they can't believe what's happening, but you can't live stream a genocide for 2 years and expect Americans to just continue supporting Israel after that. Yeah, there's a consequence. There's a price to pay for your behavior. And that's the thing that I find particularly sick, right? That the claims of, oh, this is just anti-Semitism seeks to deflect accountability for Israel's own behavior and instead smear those who, again, have the moral conviction to speak out against the atrocities. So we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about Brett Cooper, who is a young conservative, a darling of the conservatives, but all of a sudden she's getting canceled. We'll talk about why. Teddy Lucy Linda says, so all the donors who backed Cuomo took a hit. I love it. I know it is nice to see them squander their resources, although they're billionaires, so they're going to be all right. It's just hilarious how much they're willing to pump into elections and corrupt politicians, but they don't want to pay their fair share of taxes. Like it's pretty incredible. All right, let's go back to our super chats. I want to make sure I read these because I don't know if everyone here is a member. So Chrome Chinchiller says, right-wing echo chamber rolling out red carpet for Benjamin bombs over Gaza Netanyahu because nothing says fair and balanced like interviewing a guy with more war crime allegations than Emmy nominations. It's like Fox News hosting a TED Talk on how to annex your way to popularity with a side of white phosphorus. Tune in for ICC dodging tips while playing victim right after climate change is a liberal hoax. Chrome Chinchilla, man, you wrote a lot of comments here. Fun fact, in 2024, Jeddah's Shalal theme park hosted Saudi's epic Sugar Rush Music Festival, a massive Halloween bash with candy, sculptures, neon lights, and confetti storms under strict Sharia law. Yet Islamophobes at Fox News and News Nation spew hate at everyday Muslim youth chasing American dreams. And Anna, I agree, it's tough to fight for Zohran, especially the national. I'm sorry, hold on. And Anna, I agree, it's tough. It's a tough fight for Zohran, especially with the national $38 trillion debt. Yeah, totally. And it's funny because our debt always gets cited when it comes to, social programs that are meant to help the needy, but it never gets brought up when it comes to the $30 billion we've sent over to Israel since October 7th. Rage Rock for Now says, I wonder what the roughly 40% who voted for Andrew Cuomo were hoping for. I guess quite a few like the idea of maintaining the status quo, or maybe some took the Muslim smears to heart. I'm sure some of them did, which is sad. But I think most people could see through them. I mean, we've been dealing with these gross smears since the Bush administration, and I'm glad people are waking up to the reality now. Romulus 463 says, is man by nature corrupt or corrupted by society? You know what? I think maybe a little bit of both. The difference in beliefs are profound, as one will build institutions with checks and balance to limit corruption. The other would smash institutions to protect perfect man. Romulus also says examples of French Revolution, Marxism, and even fascism, as well as other nightmares, all believed in perfecting man or a group of men, using the term man in the genetic sense. Michael Cotavelli says Mamdani has announced his transition team. Thank you for reminding me of this. I was going to mention it and I totally forgot. Mamdani has announced his transition team this morning. He has appointed the amazing Lena Khan as the co-chair of the transition team. Yep, I love to see it. While JD Vance pretended like he was giving Lena Khan kudos, Mamdani actually walks the walk. He doesn't just talk the talk. All right, there's a lot more to get to, guys. Let's get back to the show. Oh, wait, no, we still have time. Sorry. Gary24 fan says, Democrats should take lessons from Mamdani's win and apply them to running their... What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the show. Anna Kasparian and Wosny Lombre with you. I don't want to waste any time, so let's get right to our next story.
Every single speaker that got up on stage either directly called out Tucker Carlson or alluded to his impact in the conservative movement. And one of the loudest voices was Mark Levin, who decided that actually he's changed his mind. And when it comes to Tucker Carlson, he does like cancel culture.
You don't get to claim you're MAGA and America first when you're lining up with the Marxists and the Islamists and Hamas and the terrorists. That's not America first. That's sick.
And I'm so glad, Mark, that you are finally just being open, that you are telling everyone how inconsistent and hypocritical you are, that your values only apply to the left.
People are trying to cancel her now. If you're wondering who that was, it's conservative darling, well, maybe former conservative darling, and former Daily Wire host, Brett Cooper, who honestly doesn't typically weigh in on foreign policy. She's very young. I think she's like 22 or 23. She's more in the realm of pop culture and entertainment, but she felt the need to call out the hypocrisy on the right, especially as it pertains to this organized campaign, really, to cancel Tucker Carlson for hosting Nick Fuentes on his podcast. The whole argument is that Tucker Carlson is bad because he platformed Nick Fuentes. What they might not know is, as much as they hate it, as much as they don't want it to be true, Nick Fuentes has a massive audience of his own. And I don't know what you're supposed to do with that. Trying to censor it doesn't work. He didn't need Tucker to be platformed. He's got his own audience. But the question is, how do you respond to someone who is ascendant, who has said things that are pretty gross, that I vehemently disagree with, not just about Jewish people, but about women, about Black people, about all sorts of people. All those videos exist. I've seen them, okay? But at the same time, they're not necessarily targeting Nick Fuentes. They're specifically targeting Tucker Carlson. And they want to destroy him. There's no question. And nothing made that clearer than the multiple speeches that were given at the Republican Jewish Coalition Summit. Mark Levin was one of the speakers, and you're about to hear Brett Cooper call him out further in this next clip.
Who are you to be deciding who can be part of MAGA? I mean, that's just so ironic considering the fact that Mark Levin was one of the leaders and one of the loudest voices of the Never Trump movement that started way back in 2015. And now here he is 10 years later trying to gatekeep the movement because he doesn't like a few people and a few very loud voices. I mean, he literally wrote a book on the power and importance of free speech and fighting back against cancel culture. In that book, he said, and I quote, "Free speech is a requisite to all other freedoms. It is also how individuals and societies learn, reform, improve, progress, etc. It is how governments are held to account or adjust to the will of the people." This is what he said on his show just a month ago. This is what he quoted about free speech.
Free speech is crucial to countering the government and those in power. It is crucial to sharing information and making decisions as a people, as a collective, we about our society. I've written about it often, including in On Power. I have an entire chapter on language and speech. Every true patriot should believe in it and defend it, period.
You were not solutions-oriented. You were not freedom-oriented. Your response was simply to wag fingers and demand that somebody you don't like be deplatformed. That is what the left does. That is not what we do.
And trying to censor people just doesn't work. It actually makes them more powerful. It just does. And if you were open-minded enough to listen to the entirety of that conversation on Tucker's show, he makes a point to draw a very clear distinction between himself and his beliefs versus what Nick Fuentes' beliefs are. And I guess, look, Woz, to be fair to those who are, criticizing Tucker Carlson, and I think it's fair to criticize him. I think that's different from trying to destroy him because he had Nick Fuentes on. He was definitely a lot more, what's the right word? I wouldn't say soft.
He was nicer to him than he was to Ted Cruz.
Right. Ted Cruz is a United States senator who believes that his mission in life is to represent Israel as opposed to the American people. And he made that clear on Tucker Carlson's podcast, by the way. And he called Tucker Carlson an anti-Semite out of the gate. And that would make me pretty angry and defensive too if I were interviewing him. But let's put that away for a minute. So look, everyone's a hypocrite when it comes to free speech. Okay, everyone. Because everyone likes to say they want to protect free speech when it's speech that they like and others are angry at. In this case, though, Mark Levin is all about free speech. He wrote about it in his book. But he doesn't like that two consenting adults who are very critical of Israel got together and had a conversation. They're both different in their ideologies in very distinct ways, but that doesn't matter. And he's not going after Nick Fuentes. He's specifically, and this has been a long-running campaign of Mark Levin's, he's specifically going after Tucker Carlson.
They've got a problem on the right because there's a bit of a civil war brewing over this Israel question. And it's just weird because Netanyahu and his coalition had decided years ago, because for whatever reason they hated Barry, even though he gave them damn near everything they wanted except for the Iran deal. And they were
Barack Obama. When you say Barry, I don't want anyone to think it's Barry Weiser.
Yeah, they hated Barack Obama and he gave them everything except for the Iran deal. And they decided, look, we're gonna throw our entire lot in with the Republicans, which is just, it's a mistake for a bunch of reasons. One, because like the Republicans aren't always in power, and you don't want to disenfranchise and alienate the other side that will one day eventually be in power and could ruin your life. Another reason why it was pretty stupid is like, do you know who right wingers are? like I'm sorry, dude. Like the people in America least likely to feel sympathy for the project of Israel are non-hyper religious right wingers. And even those,
you think so? I don't know if that's true, to be honest. I mean, the left has been far more critical of Israel for a much longer period of time.
But Anna, the left is a tiny fraction of the American electorate as compared to those right wingers. You know what I mean? And so, and also even the evangelicals who support you, they support you because they think you gotta be there so Jesus could come back and kill you all anyway. That's a toxic support. It was just always just a strange bedfellows. And the reason why they don't attack Nick Fuentes, Anna, is because they know with a lot of younger right wingers, he is seen as the vanguard of the right wing, meaning you can't get more right than him. Okay, like he's seen as the arc right winger. So to go against him is to go, you're basically calling yourself a rhino to that segment of young Republican men specifically. And I think they're literally scared of Nick Fuentes. And Tucker, they see Tucker as vulnerable. I don't know why. He got fired from Fox News.
I disagree.
And he's even bigger than ever.
He is bigger than ever. No, they don't see him as vulnerable. They'd love for him to be vulnerable. It'd be easier to crush him. He's influential. And I think that he has begun to be influential, not just among conservatives in America, but also libertarians, also those on the left who are very much part of the anti-war movement. Look, I don't like everything he has to say. I don't agree with everything he has to say. But he interviews really interesting guests. I didn't know who Colonel Douglas McGregor was, but I learned because of Tucker Carlson's program. And I think he has really interesting insights in foreign policy. He's not getting interviewed by CNN. He's not getting interviewed by corporate media or legacy media. And I think Tucker brings up some thought-provoking points on a lot of issues that I care about. And so his influential nature is precisely the reason why, and the fact that he's a critic of what the Israeli government is currently doing is precisely the reason why he has a target on his back as it pertains to people like Mark Levin, people like Lindsey Graham, people like Senator Ted Cruz. And so I just want to go to one more clip featuring Brett Cooper talking about Mark Levin, and then we'll move on to what she had to say to Lindsey Graham.
Later in his speech, Mark also made sure to emphasize that it wasn't just about Tucker and the people that he was platforming. It was about all of us who, like Tucker, are in his audience, and anybody who shares these ideas online. Just take a watch.
You think your stupid little podcast, or your stupid little subscription program, or your little TV show, or maybe you have a little radio show, is going to change the world like hell it is.
I mean, thankfully for us, Mark just said the quiet part out loud. Frankly, it is embarrassing. You are exposing that you are absolutely petrified of his influence, and therefore your strategy is to minimize his reach, which is laughable, and then attack him. You are genuinely terrified that the influencers, the podcasters, the commentators who are not backing down, who are not cowering to your very obvious blanket threats of cancellation, are running circles around your numbers. That's the only reason you're calling them little podcasts, little TV shows. And again, listen, that's fine. You have every right to be upset. I get that you're angry. I get that you're worried. You have an uphill battle to fight now, obviously. But you all picked possibly the worst strategy to employ.
I totally agree with her on that. It is the worst strategy to deploy, because when you make Nick Fuentes as dangerous as they're making him, again, they empower him and they make him, they're drawing more attention to him in the middle of his ascendancy, and they don't realize it. But also, like, what does Mark Levin do for a living? He's a conservative talk show host on radio. That's what he does. So you think your little radio show is going to change the world, Mark Levin? I mean, how gross and condescending is this guy? Now, I want to just move on to what she had to say about Lindsey Graham. I'm not conservative, but it makes me so happy. I think it's like the biggest white pill ever to see young conservatives or conservatives in general speak out against what Senator Lindsey Graham said in this speech, because it was just absolutely disgusting. So without further ado, let's get into what she had to say about that.
So I just want to say, I feel good about the Republican Party. I feel good about where we're going as a nation. We're killing all the right people and we're cutting your taxes.
I don't even have words to respond to that right now. So that's Lindsey Graham, who just got up on stage. And he said the Republicans are killing the right people. Like, Lindsey, is that a Freudian slip? Like, do you want to end up on the next episode of Candace's show? Because that's basically where you're heading with this, with these types of jokes. Like, this is not what you should be doing. But Lindsey did not just stop there. This is what he said next.
But if you ever run for office as a Republican and you embrace this weird shit, we're gonna beat your brains out.
This is just absurd. Like, weren't we just talking? Weren't we collectively all outraged and losing our minds over how disgusting it was for Gavin Newsom to sit on his podcast and say that he wanted Democrats to get out in the streets and punch Republicans in the mouth?
I loved that part of her video a lot, especially because yesterday I was on CNN's like digital platform, and the topic of political violence came up. And so Ben Shapiro was there, and then one other woman from, I think, Daily Wire was there as well. I forget her name, but she and Ben kept like harping on left-wing political violence. And look, that's fair. There has been some left-wing political violence, but are we really going to pretend like it's one-sided? And I like the fact that she called out violent rhetoric that's spewed by a literal Republican United States senator.
Yeah, I mean, she's on the nose with these sort of war hawks, because you know the war hawks of the party,
All right, it looks like we lost. Oh, there you go. There you go, Waz. Sorry, your internet froze.
Yeah, I think it's great that she's going after the war hawks of the party. And to me, the war hawks of the party and the biggest Israel supporters are one and the same. To me, it's one thing. Like, the reason why these people, are like a big reason for a lot of their full-throated support of Israel is like, no, there are guys over there for when we eventually go and kill every Iranian in existence, right? Like, that's part of the big muscular Israel support on the right. It's like, no, man, there are partners for when we want to do war crimes ourselves. And so, finally, younger people are just very much way more averse to Americans sending troops and bombing the hell out of other countries for whose benefit nobody can identify. Nobody can tell me what the war in Iraq or Afghanistan did for any single American, right? And I think people realize that, and even people on the right are calling it out, which, generations ago, no, like US militarism, that would have been part of the thing that made you love the right, was that you were about all of that crazy stuff. And the tide is turning. So while I think that's important, I think if there's like one less bad aspect of right wingerism that can just be knocked out, that's a good for all of us.
I totally and wholeheartedly agree. And for me, it also goes beyond politics. It's about the identity of this country and what we stand for and what our moral values are. And for me, it is immoral for any politician to stand up in front of a crowd of people and talk about how giddy he is over slaughtering people. So, especially as the US has aided and abetted and funded the genocide in Gaza. And honestly, I don't even know what he was specifically thinking about. Was he thinking about all those kids that got slaughtered in Gaza when he said that we're killing the right people? Or was he thinking about?
I think he's doing the freaking boats in South America and the
Which
Caribbean,
is also gross. Which is also
just
gross.
Insane.
No evidence that those fishing boats are drug traffickers. It's just, and besides which, some of them have actually survived and they were returned to Venezuela or in some cases Colombia. Really, if they're drug traffickers and they're dangerous narco terrorists, is that what you do? You
narco terrorists, by the way.
Made
Can
up.
somebody explain that to me? Like they sell cocaine and heroin, and then what? Like they blow stuff up. Like what? Where's the terrorism part?
Well, everything's terrorism now.
Our Americans' nose is being terrorized by the incredible drugs that they ship here. Like what are we doing with that? I don't understand that terminology at all.
Yeah, well, it's meant to scare people. No one's buying it, and I'm really happy that she spoke out against it. But she's been dealing with some pretty gross attacks, and in no way did she defend Nick Fuentes. She defended Tucker Carlson's decision to sit down and have a conversation with Nick Fuentes. But nonetheless, you have Ted Cruz saying, I don't know who this angry lady is, but she's missing a key distinction. Fuentes calls himself a Nazi. He has said Hitler is very cool. Hitler was right. And he is on Team Hitler. By the way, all of those things are true. She's never defended that, ever, not once. And neither has Tucker Carlson, by the way. If you explicitly side with and advocate for Hitler, you're an actual effing Nazi. So, yeah, you're right. Conservatives are in a lot of trouble. The right wing is in a lot of trouble. Trump won by running on an America First message, an anti-war message. He was popular because of that message. And he's opened a can of worms because now it's very clear to me that there's a significant portion of Republican voters and especially young conservatives who do not want to get entangled in these forever wars, who do not want US interventionism, who want our politicians to focus on making this country better. And that's one of the few things that are giving me hope right now. So we'll see how this all ends up, but we have to take our final break. When we come back, I'm gonna read your messages. So if you wanna send us member comments, Twitch comments, and super chats, now is the time to do it. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our social break, everyone. Constantine Kavira says, thanks for having Scott Horton on the show. I looked up his academy and there's a song probability I'll join. Oh, I'm guessing you meant some probability I'll join. He's so well read and brilliant on foreign policy. It's amazing. And look up and watch that debate that he had with Bill Kristol in 2021. Oh, it was for anyone who became politicized, during the war on terror. That debate is cocaine. It's narco-terrorism, okay, for the neocons. But anyway, let's go to Sarah Chan, who says, I'm surprised they never called him Boomdani. I'm from California, but I'm very happy he won. It gives me hope. I think a lot of people are feeling that way today. In Liberty and Guns We Trust says, proud to be a libertarian. I agree with Scott on everything. Great show tonight, Anna. Nice job destroying everyone on mainstream media and Zionist demons. Circling Sun, and thank you for the compliment. Circling Sun says, something I have yet to see people critique Fuentes for are his hypocrisies, such as when he laughed about how Jackson Hinkle should get airstriked in Yemen. No, I mean, I just saw a clip of him recently where he was talking about how he was like okay with what the Trump administration is doing with Venezuela, if I'm not mistaken, but it was like a pro-war message. That's just inconsistent with why a lot of young conservatives think they like him, right? So he's 27 years old. I have a theory, and if you're a man, please don't get upset with me, but it's just true. A male's maturity, I'll put it that way, isn't fully formed unless they're like at least 30 years old. Am I wrong, Waz? Am I wrong? And like, I just don't, yeah.
Depends on the subject matter. But generally speaking, in terms of managing your emotional well-being,
that's a better way of putting it. That is a way better way of putting it.
Definitely not something you're good at in your early 20s.
Or just 20s in general.
20s in general, yeah, for sure.
Let's go to Romulus 463. The English tradition of free speech dates back to King Edward the Confessor, 1044 to 1066 AD. Now the wrong post lands an Englishman in prison. By the way, there's stuff going down in the UK. There was a video of a man in Texas. He recorded it. Authorities showed up to his door to ask him questions about his criticism of Israel. The way he handled it, by the way, was fantastic. He's like, you got a warrant? Like, what are you doing? We have free speech. It's our First Amendment right. What are you doing? Got the authorities to leave. I can't believe they knocked on his door to ask him questions about his criticism of Israel online. That's insane. Anyway, sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent, but I totally get your point. Thank you for writing in. Let's get back to the show.
Well, hello.
I have been a chatty Cathy today, but I don't regret it. I feel like today's been a really great show. We have more content for you all today. We're gonna do a members only bonus episode immediately after this. But since we don't have a lot of time left to do another story for the main show, I'm gonna read a few more comments, starting with DJ Payne, who says Lindsey Graham and Levin should concentrate on their bingo hall sessions instead of talking smack about beating the crap out of people. Just play bingo, take your meds. Be in bed by 7. This is laughable to me, clowns. I mean, look, there are a lot of people in their age group who are totally with it and are also very critical of US foreign policy. So I don't want to make a generalization, but when it comes to those two, yeah, time to go to bed. And I literally mean go to sleep. We have Rage Rock for Now who says, watch out for Fuentes to get the GOP nomination. This is the thing, it'll be headed in that direction. Nick Fuentes has only grown in popularity as people have tried to censor him. So there has to be a better way of dealing with this. And it's a difficult question. I totally get it. But the more you try to silence someone, the more forbidden that person becomes, and it draws an audience to that individual. Average Gaming in our member section says, we have to stay active. Can't expect a politician who has billionaires trying to destroy him to go it alone. We have to have his back in a huge way. That's a comment about Zohran Mamdani. Robert Turk, who's been a member for 3 months, says, I didn't know anything about politics till I started watching TYT. I only started watching because of my name Turk, but now I watch you guys every night. I love that. Thank you for giving us a shot. I hope you like the show. Joanna Morton, who's been a member for 38 months, says, Jared Golden is gone. Will be gone in a year. He's not going to challenge Republican former Governor LePage. Mills blackmailed him out of the race. I have to be honest, I don't know much about that. But that's an interesting point that we should look into. Moni P. Dragon says, oh my God, these texts are so scary and threatening. Girl, you don't even know the kind of, they are scary and threatening. I'm not minimizing them. They're awful. And the FBI should be livid about the fact that an American citizen is being, targeted in such a vicious way. But if you saw my inbox, especially like my Instagram DMs, the fact that they target my husband, a neighbor decided to sick their dog at me because of my criticism of Israel. Like, it's crazy out there. So it's unfortunate that we're dealing with this. Just weird. Guess what? If the tables were turned, they'd move heaven and earth. Meaning if the same types of threats were directed toward, like pro-Israel people, yeah, I have no doubt that the FBI would treat it a little differently. By the way, like someone spray painted a swastika on, I can't remember. It was some sort of center for the Jewish community in New York City. Someone did that. It's awful. We don't know who did it. There have been some stories of hoaxes in, recent months. So I'm just going to wait and see what the investigation finds. But everyone's talking about that, which is interesting. Let's get back to the show. Oh.